Hi everyone, DisturbedShadow here, finally back to bring you the next album review in my series of 10 album reviews of albums that came out 10 years ago, back in 2004. And now I've been really busy the last few months, but I'm finally back to review another album. Now, this one came out like 4 months ago, 10 years ago, back on August 31st, 2004, and it is now December 28th, 2014. I was going to review this back in August, but a lot of stuff came up and I ended up not getting to it in time. And then school happened and then I was just busy. But now I'm on break and I have time to finally get into some more album reviews. So I'm going to be finishing up the series over the next couple of days, and then I'm going to get to my top 10 albums of this year, which I've been meaning to work on for quite some time now, but I will get it out before the end of the year. And then I've got a bunch of new stuff planned for next year, and I'm planning to be a lot more regular with my videos. But for right now, let's jump in and let's talk about another album from 10 years ago, which will be Leviathan from Mastodon. Now, this is actually, well, not the first time, but this year is actually the first time I actually listened to this album all the way through. I did it back in August when I was preparing to review it, and then I ended up not reviewing it. But going back to it now and listening to it all the way through a few times, I really get to see how good this album is. I've been a casual listener to Mastodon for a while, and not really taking time to go into some of their albums, but I heard lots of great things about this album going into it, and I was not let down at all. This album is really good, and it lives up to that expectations, and I see why lots of people say it's Mastodon's best album, because this is a great album all the way through. Now, if you're not familiar with Mastodon, they're sort of a combination of progressive metal and sludge metal, and it comes together really nicely on this album for something that is definitely worth checking out if you haven't given this album a listen. So let's jump in and talk about some of my personal favorite tracks. Now, my favorite track on this album is, of course, the opening track, Blood and Thunder, which is actually the first Mastodon song I ever heard back in 2005 in the video game Need for Speed Most Wanted, which is the game that introduced me to metal. And this is one of the songs that got me into metal, and it's a fantastic song. It starts off with this really heavy, crushing riff that pulls you right in, and then there's this really cool melodic part. It's not really a solo, but it's a more melodic part of the song. It's just instrumental, and that's really cool, and that's one of the things that stuck out to me the first time I heard this song. And of course, it has some really heavy, crushing vocals, both from, I'm not really sure, because both Troy and Brent do vocals on this album, and I'm not familiar enough with the band to know really who's doing what. But whoever's doing vocals on the song is doing a job, as well as the guest vocalist Neil Fallon, who also appears on this track. And the vocals come together really nicely for this big, heavy, crushing, like, anthem about going to catch Moby-Dick, and it's really cool. Plus those crunchy, heavy guitar and that riff the riff, the main riff of the song it's just an awesome riff. Another great song is the third track, Seabeast, which has this really cool sort of melodic intro to it. And it has this really cool lead part on it at the beginning of the song that really pulled me into the song. Another good song, track number 6, Megalodon, which has this cool sort of clean guitar intro, and then it sort of picks up as it goes along, and about halfway through the song it gets really heavy and crushing, and I just love the way that it progresses. Plus there's some cool melodic parts in this song as well. Plus the vocals are very interesting on this song, and they change throughout. And of course, Brann on the drums is doing an insane job on this track, as he is doing for most of this album, but this one struck out particularly to me on the drums. Track number 7, Naked Burn, which has a change up in the vocals where it's more singing as opposed to the sort of raw, rough sort of sound that a lot of the other songs have on the vocals. And I really like that, how they have a variety. And not only that, but there's a lot of cool guitar parts on the song that sort of pulled me into it, and it's one of my favorite tracks on the album. Track number 8, Aqua Dementia, which features Scott Kelly on vocals as a guest vocalist, in addition to vocalists from Mastodon. And it just has really heavy, raw aggression to the vocals, plus some cool guitar parts again. Track number 9, 13 minutes and 39 seconds long, Hearts Alive, which is one of the highlights of this album. It has this cool, slow, clean guitar intro, and then the bass comes in and cool stuff happens. Then the guitars get all distorted and heavy, and just progresses throughout the song. There's all these cool different aspects on the instrumental side and on the vocals, so there's some like growly stuff and then more slow, low-end singing type of thing. It's deep singing, and it sounds really cool. Plus, the guitars and the bass and the drums progress really nicely throughout the entirety of this really long song. It's just a progressive, sludgy awesomeness. That's the best way I can describe it. And finally, track number 10, Joseph Merrick, which is an instrumental track to close this album. It's very slowed down, not really distorted a lot, and there's lots of cool effects on the guitars, and it just sounds really interesting with that layered on top of the acoustic guitars on the song. It's just a very interesting song, and it's a really cool instrumental, and it's definitely worth checking out. Those are some of my personal favorite songs on the album, of course. There's plenty of other songs on this album that are worth checking out. Now, let's get in and talk about specifics on the band members themselves. So let's talk about vocals first. As I said, I'm not really sure who's doing vocals on this album because it lists both Troy and Brent as lending their vocal talents to this album. And then, like I said, I'm not familiar enough with Mastodon to really know who's doing what. Although I believe Brent is doing the more melodic singing, where Troy's doing the growlier kind of stuff. But I could be mistaken again. I'm not too familiar with Mastodon, especially a lot of their older stuff, like this album. But overall, the vocals are very interesting and unique, and I've not heard anything like that from another band. They're very raw and aggressive, but there's also some more melodic, singy parts that change it up. Plus, whoever's doing those more singy parts has a really unique voice. I believe that is Brent, like I said, but I'm not sure. Correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments, but it is what it is. I'm not really sure. But, like I said, both vocalists are doing a very good job with what they're doing. Now let's talk about guitars. Brent and Bill on guitars are doing a very excellent job. There's this heavy, crunchy, sludgy guitar tone throughout the whole album. And it's just crushing, and it's heavy, and it's awesome. Plus, they're also doing some more technical kind of stuff and more melodic kind of stuff to mix it up a bit from just the sort of chuggy, sludgy riffs and stuff like that. There's a lot of cool melodic parts to mix it up, and clean guitar parts and bits of acoustic guitar and stuff thrown in the mix to keep it interesting. Now, Troy on bass is doing a pretty good job. It's nice and loud in the mix, so I can hear it even without my headphones, which I like to hear. And I say that in almost every review. If the bass is turned up loud, I really, really enjoy that. And then, of course, there are parts where he's doing something different from the guitars. There's actually a lot of the parts, especially when the songs go for the more slowed down, clean guitar sort of thing, and then the bass is doing its own thing that's different from that. Plus, there are some other moments where the guitars are heavy and then the bass is doing its own thing, and it's cool, and it comes together really nicely. So Troy's doing a really good job on bass. Now, let's talk about Brann on drums. Oh my god, this guy is a fucking machine. He's crazy. Just, it's like, I'm listening, I'm like, oh my god, is this guy for real? He's doing all these insane things on the drums. And he's playing so fast, and he's all over the kit, and it's just like, does this guy have extra arms? Because he's doing all this crazy stuff, and he's doing an amazing job. And he is a fantastic drummer, and he's a fantastic drummer for Mastodon, and he keeps stuff really interesting. It's all these cool fills and drum parts and everything. It just comes together really nicely. So he did a fantastic job on drums. Overall, all the guys did a great job on this album, and I can see why people praise it as one of Mastodon's best albums, because it is a fantastic listen. And if you haven't checked it out, go check it out now, because, like I said, this is a great album, and it's definitely worth checking out. And it is definitely deserving a place as one of the top 10 albums of 2004. So go check it out, and I'll see you guys in the next video.